2021 is the year to make things happen. Pop into your local branch today and find out how the Nottingham Building Society could help you plan your future finances.
So where did ice hockey come into the life of Paul Adey?
Well, a young age. I mean, I think it started with skating, first of all, because when I was a kid, my dad used to make a little skating rink in the backyard where we lived, and I used to just get on there because the ice would stay for a good 3 months of the year. So I used to get on there and skate around. It used to really bug me that my two sisters who were in figure skating were much better skaters than me. So that really pushed me to try to catch them up, And so I got enrolled in ice hockey, and fortunate in my hometown, we had I think three outdoor rinks with lights and boards. Plus we had our own rink, So there was always ice available, and whenever I could, I'd put my skates on my stick, and freezing cold, I'd be walking down to one of the outdoor rinks, meeting some friends, and sometimes not just meeting whoever was there and playing, and so that was great. I mean, I love that. The only problem what I didn't like was my frozen feet and hands by the time I got home. So a little frostbite there a few times. But no, I mean, I was lucky to have that kind of access to ice, where I could hone my skills. And a lot of times you'd end up playing with kids older than you. So it was really hard and you get knocked around a bit. So all of that helps you in the long run, and so that's probably where, it all started. We had about one game, one practice a week. That was always up to us to do the extra. And even in the summers, we used to, with my friends, we played ball hockey and stuff. And so it was like a 12-month of the year thing. We had our summer sports, baseball and football, English football, and like NFL style football. So those were the ones we played mostly in the summer. But hockey was the big one, and it was for the longest period. And most kids in Canada, most kids just want to play ice hockey.
And which players I assume you're watching it on the telly as well at this time. So which players are you like gravitating towards when you're watching the game? Who are your favorites when you were growing up?
Well, growing up, it's being from Montreal is strange. My favorite player wasn't from Montreal. He was from Boston. His name was Bobby Orr. And he used to just take the puck and go from one end to the other, and very few players could do that. He was just so talented and skated so well for a defenseman. He was one of those first defensemen to move up into the play and make things happen offensively. And although I never played defense, my favorite player was a defenseman. So if anybody who I really admired as a right winger, because that was my position, it was Guy Lafleur, who played for the Montreal Canadiens. He was an exceptional player. So there's a couple of guys that I really liked as players, and dreamed to be like them, but it wasn't going to happen. They were just too good.
And then when did ice hockey start to become a realistic possibility as a career for you? When did you start to take it, quote unquote, seriously?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question because, from my hometown, we weren't a big town. I think we were about, I'm guessing, at the most 20,000. And we used to compete a lot against towns that were like bigger, like places that had like 200,000 population. And we always competed in AA, which was the top level. Then when I got to midget, they changed the rules that it went by the size of your town. So we had to drop into midget double B. So, here we are playing midget double B. Of course, we killed it and won it. And then we had to play the top team in AA for the championship. And we beat them and won the championship. And then I got an offer to go try out midget AAA. So I went and tried out, made the team. And, I guess I was a bit surprised I actually made the team. I wasn't, the thing they always said with me, well, you're a bit too small, you won't make it, and I made it. And then when I was in midget AAA, they said, well, you're too small to go to major junior. And after midget AAA, normally your next step would be major junior, Quebec Major Junior Hockey League, but they said it was too small. So I played a year junior B in the area where I lived. St. Lambert Lions was the name of the team, just next door to the town I lived in. And so I played with them, and I had an amazing season. I mean, I was 17 playing against 18, 19, 20-year-olds. I think I was second in the scoring that year, and never thought anything other than that. I had a couple of universities from the States talking to me, maybe do another year and we'll maybe give you a scholarship. A lot of maybes in there, And then I got a phone call from Hull Olympics. Paul, are you going to the draft? And I was like, what? Why would I go to the draft? You've all told me I'm too small. I can't play. No, we're drafting you. I think in the 4th round, be there, you'll be drafted. So I went and they drafted me. And so then it was like, okay, so you drafted me. The problem is if I go to camp and don't make the team, then I can't go for a scholarship. The universities won't take, in those days, the universities wouldn't take you if you went just to camp. They would consider it semi-professional or whatever. So I had a long talk with the coach and said, here's my situation. I have a possible opportunity with universities in the US, or I come to you. But if I come to you, I'll lose those possibilities. And he said, well, I really think you can make our team. So when he said that to me, I thought, okay, he's saying I got a good chance of making it. I'll take my chances. And I went and I made the Hull Olympics and played there for a couple of seasons. And then I had a year in Shawinigan as an overage player. And so that was when I realized, okay, maybe I can make something of it. I mean, I did go to the Hartford Whalers NHL training camp. Things didn't work out in the end. And I ended up in the minors playing in Fort Wayne and Peoria, which was St. Louis Blues farm team. And I got to the point there where I said to them, look, can I get a tryout or a contract for next season with the Blues? Because I had a good year. I think I led the team in goals, and they said, no, not this year. And I thought, you know what? I can't keep myself in this situation financially, because I would come back after a season in the minors without a contract other than the contract with the team. So I was a free agent, basically. Come back with a few $1,000s in my pocket, but that's not going to last you very long. So I just started to look at Europe, and I ended up in Europe, and financially it was better for me. I was making much more money than I was playing in the minors. So that's how it all worked out, that I ended up eventually in Nottingham.
So, before you stopped, you made a stopover in France at Briançon, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. But
Briançon.
Briançon. There we go.
Yeah.
Anytime
That's my French side, mate. I was brought up in the province of Quebec, so you learn French. It's part of the deal.
I've always been told that Quebec French is very different to French French.
It is, actually, and that's a good point, because when I went to Briançon, I'd be speaking French and they'd be looking at me like I was from another planet. And so what I had to do is I had to change my accent to their accent and use more of their vocabulary than the vocabulary, because we have a lot of slang words in, where I was from, Montreal, like French English words are mixed in a little bit. And so I had to kind of change the way I spoke so that they could understand me. So you're right, there is a difference there for sure. And people in France think they have better vocabulary, better French than in Quebec. Maybe there's some truth to that.
Well, Guy Lepine tells me Quebec French is better, and I'm not going to argue with Guy Lepine. So,
no, he's a pretty big guy. I don't think I'll argue with him too much either.
So, at that point, when you make that move to France, did you think that you were going to go on this magical European adventure when you first set out on it?
No, not really. I didn't think anything other than going and playing that season, and we did really well, actually. It was one of these teams that thought, oh, these guys aren't going to make the playoffs, so we'll offer them some good bonus money, right? And what happened was every time we won, our bonus increased for the next win.
Okay.
So we started a bit slow, and we were looking at possibly going to the bottom 4 at the I guess it was like a third of the way through the season, or staying in you have to stay in 5th, I think it was 5th or 6th, to stay with the top group. And we ended up just by scraping in by a point or two. So then the bottom 4 then had to play against the top 4 Division 2, and we played basically the top 6 for the remainder of the season for playoff places and stuff. And we moved it right up to, I think it was like 2nd place in the end. So we were making more and more money every time we win a game. And they were like, the good thing was it was the town that owned the team, so we knew we were going to get our money. And anyways, we took it all the way we went all the way to the finals that year and lost in a shootout eventually. And so that was tough to lose that way. So we came very close. And that would have been my first championship as a professional, because I hadn't won a professional championship, from the previous years. So it was tough. Yeah, more than a bit disappointed we didn't win that. But, when you get to a shootout and you lose on that, you know how it is. It's just a question of inches, isn't it? And so that was tough. And but the thing is I had such a great year there that I figured, they'll give me a contract and I'll be back. But the coach decided to sign his nephew rather than have me back. So that wasn't the best situation. So I ended up going to Nottingham. That's how I ended up in Nottingham. Because even up to the point, because I came in Nottingham a little bit late that year, I believe I was like a month later or something. And even to that, like there was a period where they must have been having disagreements about the whole thing because they didn't make a decision on it till that late. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So it left me kind of, with nothing. And then my agent said, "Oh, there's a team in England, Nottingham. Well, they'll offer you a contract. You want to play?" I said, "Yeah, sure. Let's go do it." And 11 years with the team. So that's how I ended up in Nottingham playing here for 11 years. Yeah.
And obviously, when you first come to Nottingham, Alex Dampier is your first head coach in Nottingham. Did he speak? Because obviously he had a different system to most of the league, from what I understand. He went with one import forward in yourself and two import defensemen, where a lot of teams went two import forwards and one import defenseman. Did he speak to you about that before he brought you in?
No. No, it was like the team needs a player. Will you go? And I said, "Yeah, okay, I'll go." But I had no idea that I was going to be dropping onto the ice against two imports and Tony Han with Brayfield, and me playing with a couple of young guys. But it was just a big challenge, of course. You just have to deal with it. Eventually, Alex said to me, "You need to go to center. You have to get off the wing and play center because you're not getting the puck enough. We need you to have the puck more." And to be honest, I built a good relationship with both Kurtenbach and Darren Dirtle. They were really good at getting me the puck. And Terry sat back and Doc jumped up into the play, Doc Dirtle. And he made things happen as like that next wave coming up the ice. And a lot of teams didn't have that. So I knew if the guys kind of went to the net and I bought some time, that Doc he was a really good skater for a guy who was 6'5", could score, great hands. If I got him the puck coming late, he'd score, So he was like another forward coming up the ice for me. And that worked really well. And we could rely on Terry if we got caught up the ice. He was great at the back defensively. Terry Kurtenbach, one of the best. And he got the job done for us that way. So we could be aggressive with him at the back. So I didn't have a forward with me. But when Dirtle was on the ice, I essentially did have a guy coming late that I knew was coming to support me. So it worked. And it was a good decision because in the end, we won the playoff championship that year. So it worked. And it wasn't, sure, I maybe could have scored more points if I had another forward alongside me the whole time. But
your numbers would have been even more ridiculous.
I don't know. But you know what? It's like anything, it's about the team. It's not about yourself. And you got to find a way to win.
And tell me about Alex Dampier, the coach. Because we hear about him, but we don't know much about him.
Yeah, Alex, I think for me, his strength was his communication skills. He really knew how to talk to players and get the best out of them. He knew when to be serious. He knew when to have a laugh. I think he used to laugh before me sometimes in the changing room because some of our guys were pretty funny. Like in the early years, you had Gavin Fraser and Nigel Rose. They were so quick with the one-liners that it was tough not to laugh. And I like to be serious before a game. And I think the guys knew that. So they'd be cracking a joke here and there, and they kind of look over to see if they got me to laugh or not, So, but occasionally they got me to laugh. But no, they were the guys were great. And the interesting thing about that team, and you wonder why we won a championship. When we used to practice, we always had a scrimmage at the end of practice. And you know something? We played that scrimmage like we played the game, and guys were slashing each other's. And of course, today's rules are so different, but we used to beat on each other's pretty bad, and even try to, how they had the netting in Nottingham. If we hit a guy, we tried to flip him over the boards, and it was like dog eat dog in our own practices. So we were ready when the game started, But we had a lot of personalities, that's for sure.
And after speaking to Gary, I hear you had quite the eventful debut weekend as a Nottingham Panther.
Yeah, we went up to Scotland, and it seemed like everybody just wanted to test me one way or the other, and I think Rocky Saganack and I got into it a little bit in the first game in Ayr, and I don't even remember what happened there. I don't think we ever got to fighting, but we were probably going at it pretty good. And I got caught coming out of the penalty box. There was some wires hanging down. I had one leg hanging from some wires, and when you got off the ice in Ayr, you both came off together through this small corridor, and things were breaking out in the corridor. and it was a crazy first game. And you know the size of the rink. I mean, it was miniature, right? It was the smallest rink I ever played in my life. I mean, I played in Toledo when they had a really small rink back in my IHL days, but this was even smaller. So it was, yeah, it was crazy. I mean, but I think I got thrown out of that game, and then I went into Edinburgh, and the same thing. These guys are all attacking me, trying to maybe take me out of the game. I don't know. And eventually, I fought one guy, and it kind of calmed everything down. And I guess guys would see that I would stick up for myself. And then we get back to Nottingham, and Alex comes to talk to me, and he says, "Oh, Tony Johnson's not so sure if we should keep you because you're not staying on the ice and playing any hockey." But Alex said to him, "Listen, we need someone like that who's going to stick up for themselves, and that's what the rest of the team is going to do. You know, if we have that in our team." And yeah, I think it kind of sent the message to the league that I was going to, you know, I never went looking for fights in my career, but if I had to, then I would, you know. And I think set an example to the team, let the other teams know that, you know, I wasn't a pushover, and you know, things went from there.
And you mentioned getting back to Nottingham. Tell me about the old Nottingham Ice Stadium, because I never got to see it, so I love hearing the stories about it.
Do you know what? I mean, it was an incredible rink, and what made it incredible was the fans, because that would be packed to the rafters, that rink, 2005 or whatever it was, if they can squeak a few more into the side doors and whatever angle they could watch from. It was packed. I mean, and the fans were great because we'd be down a couple of goals in the third period, and we'd be trying, and the fans would just support us. Like, they would pick up in the game with us and kind of drag us along. And the guys never quit, and we played hard right to the end. We won a lot of games in the third period in that rink, just through the passion of the fans coming through to us on the bench and on the ice. And that's what I liked about that rink, was just the atmosphere. It was just so loud. The old organ would play, and it was, you know, a bit more traditional than what it is today. There wasn't so much of a big show, you know, which is great today. It's fun. The fans love it. In our day, you know, that atmosphere came a lot from the fans, and that's what brought us a lot of success over the years.
I spoke to Barry Nykar yesterday, and the way he described the old rink was like it's something out of Slapshot.
Well, I mean, you know, to be honest, I think the IHL league that I played in was the closest thing to Slapshot, you know, back in the 80s. That there's some things that went on in that league that, you know, you shake your head at, you know, today, especially today. But yeah, I mean, those small rinks are tough to play, and then things happen, and there's not a lot of room out there, especially for a big guy like Barry who plays that style, physical. He would have been in a war for 60 minutes, you know. So I know where he's coming from. It was an intense place to play, and you know, sometimes you're out there in those small rinks, and you got some big guys who are trying to run you down. There's nowhere to hide. You just got to put your shoulder down and hope for the best sometimes, you know. And but he's right. I mean, it was a tough rink to play, and the opposition hated coming to our rink. There's no question about it. But we didn't really enjoy going into rinks like Whitley Bay and Durham in the day, because they were small, tough little rinks to play. And so everybody kind of got their own back, you know, when they went back to their own rinks. So yeah, I mean, he's right. Especially the rink in Nottingham was not an easy place to play in.
And when you get to Nottingham, what were your first impressions of the city?
Well, you know, I had spent the year in France, and it's an advantage to come to a city that you can speak English and do what you normally do, you know, where you're from. So there was no big adjustment for me. There was actually quite a bit to do, and it was a decent city center. We'd go out for a drink with the guys after a game every once in a while. That's what we didn't have a game the next day, of course.
Of course.
I used to say to some of the British guys on the team, "Listen, guys, we got a game tomorrow. You've got to go home." And they, yeah, okay. The next thing you know, they're out the door for a quick one down in the city center, you know. So it didn't work. I couldn't get them to stay in sometimes, but they came to play the next day. That was the important thing. But no, it's a good town. It's always been a good party town, and you know, it's always had a good atmosphere to it. So I've enjoyed all the years I've been here.
And was it early on when you were in that you started to think, I'd quite like to stay here for a while? Obviously, you're not planning 11 years in the same place, but were you thinking, it's quite nice here, I want to stay here?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, I was happy here, and I enjoyed my hockey here. So I didn't see any reason. I mean, of course, if a great big offer would have come through for a lot more money, then of course I can entice you away from anywhere. Let's be honest. It's like you got to make a living. So, but I was getting money here that I would have made in France or Italy or some other countries. So I didn't see any reason to go, and I liked it here. I mean, that was the bottom line. I liked it here. I enjoyed playing in the small rink. It was a great atmosphere. And although, like you said, it was some tough nights, but you just got to deal with it and play on, as they say.
Did you pick the number 22? Or was that just given to you based on squad number?
Well, that's a good story, because when my favorite number was 12. So when I came here, I said, "Oh, is 12 available?" No. Darrell Eason has 12, and he's been here a while. And I said, "Oh, fair enough. I'm not gonna." I said, "Unless he wants to give it to me, I'm not gonna beg for it, or I didn't want the guy to take the guy's number. They said, "Well, we have 22." And I said, "Well, there's a 2 in it, so yeah, let's go with that." And then I wore it ever since. So yeah, it's a good number. Yeah, I mean, it brought me some good years, and obviously the shirt retirement is special, and so yeah, it's nice to have a number that I never used till I got here, and I used it my whole career here. So it's not like I used 22 ever in my life till I got here.
Now, you mentioned that you are a whisker away from winning your first professional championship in France, and now then you didn't have to wait long to actually pick up your first professional championship, because now we get to Wembley 1989. Tell me about, because like we mentioned earlier, that team wasn't supposed to get there. You were the underdogs going into that entire weekend. So take me inside that locker room as you go to that weekend.
Yeah, I mean, we just were confident. We played really well in the second half of the season. We got better and better as the season went along. And we got to, I think we got to a point where we believed, hey, we can win this. We're good enough. We're as good as anyone else. We have to play well, obviously, to win. Or we felt Davy Graham was as good as any of the other goalies on the other team, so we had a good goalie, and that's an important factor. And we always worked hard. I mean, the guys weren't lazy when they got on the ice for practice, and like I said, we played hard in practice. We beat the daylights out of each other sometimes in practice. So we were ready. I mean, we were ready for that weekend, and we believed we could do it. And I think going up, if I remember, it was Whitley Bay in the semifinal. And, it was always an end-to-end high-scoring game against Whitley Bay. And I think, again, it was one of those. And we just,
8-6.
8-6. And we found a way to just outscore them. But they had some great players, some great scorers. I always felt that we had a little bit more depth than Whitley Bay. And I think that would make the difference for us. And it did in the end. And then in the final, we picked up Ayr. And in my mind, I mean, I was being a scorer in my day. I also knew that Danny Shea was playing great hockey at the time. And I knew the matchup would be me and him. And I thought, it's not so important for me to score in this one. The most important thing for me is to make sure Danny doesn't have the game he did against Durham. And so we battled hard, the two of us, in that game. I don't think he scored, if I remember. And we won that game. It was a close battle. It was tough. I mean, they played really well in that game. Rocky Saginaw did a great job behind the bench with them, as Alex Dampier did with us. Went to the third period, and eventually we found a way. And again, I felt it was down to our depth, especially up front. We had more forwards who could, play a lot of minutes. And they're like Randall Weber, Dwayne Keewer, just to mention a couple of guys who were very good. I think they were on the second line at that time. And we had guys, who had, Nigel Rhodes, Gavin Fraser, we had Bremner with experience. We had a lot of guys there that had some experience, and they hadn't won anything. And I think the motivation was there. I remember being in a change room after the second period, and I just listened a little bit, and sometimes it was quiet in there, but it wasn't. I mean, the guys were all saying, look, okay, we can do this. There was so much positivity in that room. I thought, okay, we're going to do this. And we did. We went on and won it. It was a really special moment for me. My first championship as a professional. And the fans made it even more special. We must have had 4,000 or 5,000 people from Nottingham at that game. So it was really something I'll never forget.
And let's say it's been on YouTube. We put it on YouTube. And the thing that stands out to me the most is the air horns, because you don't get that anymore. And that must have such a unique experience to it all.
It does, yeah. And it was really loud. And, when you're down on the ice, you don't always hear everything. You know, you're focused, you're concentrating on your game. But that game, you heard the noise the whole game. I don't think there was a quiet moment in that game from what I remember. It was just the atmosphere was incredible. And even afterwards, I mean, the atmosphere was incredible when we won it. I mean, we had so many fans. We had way more fans than air, obviously. I mean, there must have been about 4,000 Nottingham fans there, maybe more. It was incredible the support we got, and I obviously helped us, you know. That helped us, and it was a special moment for everyone. I think, you know, it's nice for the fans to win it too, not just the players. And so, yeah, it was a great moment, and you know, it was a team effort all the way through. You know, it wasn't just anyone in particular. We had to have a good team, a good solid, good depth, good coaching, you know, support from the management. And when you get everything working together, you win a championship.
And obviously, back then, the British Hockey League was very Brit heavy. It's a very Brit heavy league. Did the standard of the British players surprise you all when you came over?
Well, I mean, it did. I mean, I didn't know what to expect, to be honest with you. I mean, and I realized that the one thing the British players played a little bit more Canadian style. It was more of a physical game, a little bit more intimidation than maybe some other countries in Europe. So in France, it wasn't so much like that. There was some of that, but maybe a third of what you had here. So what the guys maybe lacked in a bit of skill, they had in passion and in physicality. So that was a different side of the game you had to deal with. I think the young guys who were starting to come through, like you had like Simon Hunt, Simon Perkins, and Nicky Belchin, all those guys could skate really well. I mean, they were well taught, and they impressed me with their skills. And actually, Tate came in a bit later, and he was a good skater, good skill. So there was players who, you know, even Stuart Parker wasn't as good as a skater as those guys, but he was a very good hockey player, scoring touch and stuff. So there were some good young players who came through the system. Obviously, there was Gary Rippengale, who we lost, was by far the best defenseman coming through as a young player, and it was unfortunate that happened. But so you saw that talent starting to come through, probably as much talent back then as there is at times today, you know. So that says a little bit about you know, that maybe the players weren't as bad as what people kind of say, comparing them from today to yesterday. Some of these guys were good players. I mean, you had the Cooper brothers back then who could easily play in the league today and be top players in the league. Obviously, Tony Hand, as you know, was an incredible player. There's a lot of really good players out there. Scott Neal also was a good player. I mean, you know, some of these guys were really good hockey players, and there was more. I can't think of everybody off the top of my head. And so there was a lot of good British players, and probably don't maybe get the respect that they should be getting because they were very good.
And you mentioned Danny Shea earlier. Were there any players that you liked matching up against, you know, for that one-on-one battle?
Well, I like the one-on-one. I like to compete against somebody who was a good player. So there was like Danny Shea was good that year. I mean, Rick Brabant and I had many battles over the years. He was a great player. Got to play with him in Nottingham. We played well, and in Great Britain we played together quite a bit too. So, you know, those two guys come to mind. And Timmy Cranston, who played in Sheffield, I played with him in junior, and it was always whenever I played against him, it was always a bit of a laugh, you know, because he's quite a character. But he was he's a good hockey player, and he battled hard one-on-one. Ross Lambert was another guy who battled hard one-on-one. Probably one of the better defensive players I played against. Really good defensively, Ross, and he can score some points too. And so, yeah, there's guys you remember that in my natural position wasn't center, but I had to play center for quite a few years. And when the Super League came in, I switched to playing wing because that was my natural position. Obviously, with the standard being so high, you've got to be in your best position to be able to do your best, you know. So that was a transition there for me back to my normal position.
So how easy was it for you? Like I say, if the big offer had come in, there's every chance you would have left Nottingham. But how easy was it for you to re-sign for Nottingham year on year as the BHL rolled on?
As the what? Sorry?
As the BHL rolled on. Because obviously, when you get to 1996, it changes to the Super League.
Yeah, I mean, well, I just, like I said, I was happy here, and the team obviously made me better offers every year to keep me here. They were happy with the way I was playing. So I stayed. I mean, it was that simple, really. It's not there's no magic to it. I mean, it's, okay. And I used to be. There's only one time I had a 2-year contract with Nottingham. Every other time is a 1-year contract. To be honest with you, I like that because I didn't mind the pressure of having to
Yeah.
play well to earn a better contract the next year. I think I played better when I had pressure on me than if I had a 2-year contract. I think it's too comfortable for me. I didn't really like. I did it once and I didn't want it again. So I was happier with a 1-year contract when I was playing, and it worked for me because if I had a good year, I got rewarded with a raise the next year.
And then obviously your first championship always stands out to you as something special. But during the BHL years, you did pick up a couple of autumn cups as well. Do either of those stand out to you as much as the '89 playoffs, or is it all the '89 playoffs always be potentially one of the most special ones?
No, I think the '89 playoff, because it was my first,
Mm.
and because of how it all went down, and the team that we had was like kind of not even predicted to get to the finals weekend at the start of the season. I think that was special because we were an underdog going in and we won it. And we won it, there's no luck involved. We just beat the other teams pure and simple on the day. And so that's why I was, and plus it was a great bunch of guys. I mean, we had a good room. Guys got along. Yeah, sure, we clashed every once in a while on the ice, but that's normal. But in terms of the team's personality, it was a good one. And that's why we had success also. Played hard for one another.
And then when you come over, how quickly do you buy into that Panthers-Steelers rivalry?
Well, when I came over, I don't think there was a Steelers to start with. They were in Solihull at that time, if I'm not mistaken. I think Dave Sims was in Solihull. I think he eventually moved the team out of there to Sheffield.
Okay.
That's what I remember. They played a big part. They've since played a big part in that. So when it started, when Sheffield went to the big rink,
yeah,
and then they kind of became the favorites because they had the big crowd and the big money compared to some of the other clubs. So they were going to be able to buy a good team every year, and so the rivalry was built with Sheffield having that big fan base to build a good team, and then we had to be on our toes and be ready to compete. And but because it's so close and the fans are so passionate, they have a good bunch of fans in Sheffield too, as well as in Nottingham, and maybe they don't get along at times because they're so passionate about their teams. They're both were good bases and really support their clubs. And that's what makes it special too, because the fans are really behind their teams. When you go to Sheffield, when you walk into Sheffield, and the atmosphere is incredible. And then you come to Nottingham, the atmosphere is incredible. And so, the rivalry is there because of two good teams, but also because two great fan bases.
And 1996 comes in, and it changes from the BHL to the Super League. And you mentioned that the British players were quite impressive, but did you enjoy the rising standard that the Super League brought?
Well, I think the difference for me was that I didn't have to do as much as I had to do in the past because there was, I was getting a bit older too. I think I was about 30. I'm thinking 30. How many years was the Super League here for? About
it was to 2003, so 7.
7. Okay. So I'm just trying to think. So I was about 3-4 years in the Super League. But it becomes obviously a level change because you went to almost all import players. So you have to find, okay, how am I going to fit into this and keep my job, basically, because that's the nuts and bolts of it, right?
Yeah.
So I thought I got to go back to wing because that's where I played when I was in the minors, and that's where I felt comfortable. So I did that, which I was happy to be able to go back to playing right wing because I liked playing right wing. And you got to play with, obviously a better group of players. And that's not insulting anybody. But when you bring 16 imports into your team, you're going to have, some ex-NHLers. You're going to have some AHL players, East Coast League players, some guys from Sweden and Finland, which is what we had all of that. Top league guys from those countries too. So the level was going to be higher. And I enjoyed it. I enjoyed that new level of competition, and I felt I had something to prove because it was like, oh yeah, but he came over way back in '89, so he's not going to last. He's not going to be any good. So I had a little chip on my shoulder. No, no, no. Myself and other guys like Steve Moria, Rick Brabant, we're going to show you that we can play at this level, and we all did.
And you mentioned that chip on your shoulder, and I'm guessing that started all the way back when everyone was telling you were too small to make it. So you've had that. You probably had that chip throughout your career.
Probably, you're probably right. But it's a good chip to have. You always should want to try to prove something, and you should always be competitive and want to do well. And that was a big thing for me. And but like I said, it's if you want to, if you want to win trophies, it's a team game, and you've got to find where you fit in and how you could play your best for your team. And by going back to right wing, I felt that made it possible for me to do that. And
it also showed that how Nottingham adapted to the BS. That early on in the Super League, you picked up 2 B&H Cups, which is kind of we belong in this league when you pick up those kind of trophies.
Yeah, we were always Nottingham's always been a good cup team. I mean, there's no, that's
everyone knows that.
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of cup trophies there, right? I mean, but they're not easy to win. Everyone thinks, oh, it's just a cup. No, it isn't. I mean, you still got to play good hockey. You still got to win your way through to get to a final. Then you got to win that final. I mean, the toughest thing is to win the final. So, yeah, I mean, it was nice to win those trophies. I mean, if you can get a trophy every second year, you've done well. I mean, it's not easy to win trophies, and there's other good teams competing for trophies. So it's they were great to win every single one of those. I guess the disappointment would be finishing second once or twice with the Panthers and not winning the league. We came pretty close one year, went down the last weekend, I think it was, and just got beat up probably from Sheffield, I think, on that one. But so yeah, I mean, you have your highs, you have your lows, and that's part of being a professional player.
And if you had to put your finger at what do you think it was that the Panthers struggled in the league? Like, not struggled, but didn't reach that holy grail obviously until 2013.
Yeah, I mean, there's been one league championship, and it's a bit disappointing, I'm sure, for everyone. Sometimes a bit you got to be a bit lucky too with injuries. It's a long season, I think getting off to a good start helps. That never hurts. You need a good team. Obviously, you're not going to win with a poor team. But I always say, it's a good balance between your players, your coach, your management, your fans. And I think if there's a good balance between everyone's on the same page, you have a better chance of winning a league championship. And I think that's really important. So, why haven't the Panthers? Why has the Panthers only won one league championship? Maybe a bit of bad luck along the way too. A few seasons with injuries and stuff. Sometimes some teams are built for big games, and others are built for a lot of games. And it just depends how you structure your team and the system you play. And there's a lot involved.
And then, after 11 years, your time in Nottingham came to a close as a player. Was it just time for you to move on and try something new at that point? Because you went to Italy, didn't you?
Pardon me?
You went to Italy, didn't you, for a season?
I did, yeah. I mean, I think we went for a few games with Great Britain into Czech and places like that. And Paul Heavey, I believe, was there with the team, and I didn't have a contract. And he said, there's a guy in Milan looking for a player, an EU player, because I had my EU passport. So I said, oh, well, who is it? He says, oh, I'll give me your name. And he got Ivan Zanata, the coach there in Milan, called me and said, do you want to come? Like, we need a player, and did my research, and I'll have you. So I ended up going to Milan one season, which was a nice experience because it was a change, and living in Milan was nice. And we actually played in the French league, which is ironic because I played in the French league my first year, right? So we played against French teams. We were actually by far the best team, but it got very political. They wouldn't let us play in the French championship. We had to be in the French Cup League because they didn't want a team outside of France winning the league. So it got very political. We almost didn't even start the season. anyways, we maybe lost 5 games the whole year. We were a really good team. We had Canadians, Italians, Finnish players, Swedish players, French players. We had a real good team, but it was a fun team to play with because the guys were a good bunch. We had some long travel. Like sometimes we'd have to take the bus from like Milan to Paris, which was like 16 hours or something.
Wow.
It seemed like 16 hours anyways. It was that long. And going through the mountains, all those roads aren't always the best. But no, it was a really good experience playing in Milan. Enjoyed it. I really liked the coach. Ivan Zanata was a really good coach. I think I was 37 that year. I think that was that my last year?
No, you came back for a year in England.
Yeah, yeah. So that was a year before Sheffield. Yeah, losing track of all the years. But no, but it was a fun year. We enjoyed it. I mean, I remember New Year's we went to Briançon of all places because there was one of the guys on the team playing in Milan was from Briançon, so we invited all the guys come to Briançon for the weekend because we didn't have any games or something. And so we went and we went up to a ski resort on top of the mountain and had a big party up there on New Year's Eve. And then we tobogganed down this big mountain. We lost a couple of guys along the way. Luckily, we found 1 or 2 guys up to the snow here, drunk, and they couldn't bloody get out of the snow. So yeah, if we would have left them there, they would have froze overnight. But so we had this toboggan thing all the way down to the bottom of the hill, and that was a good time together with the guys, So you do some things that you'd never do in your life because you're playing in different places, Then next day we traveled back to Milan and got ready for practice and things like that. So no, it was a good year in Milan. I enjoyed it. Liked the coach, liked the players. Fans were very passionate, like the Nottingham fans. They would sing in Milan. They would sing from the start of the game to the end, nonstop. And it was a good thing because some games we were winning like 12-1, and if it wasn't for them singing, I think we would have fallen asleep on the bench. Some of the guys. So no, it was a good experience there in Milan.
Then after a year in Milan, the unthinkable happens. Paul Adey returns to the UK, but doesn't come back to the Panthers. He goes to play for the Sheffield Steelers. How did that situation arise?
Well, there was no interest. Let's be honest. There was no interest for Nottingham to sign me, and Sheffield lost a couple of guys to injury. And Dave Sims called me and said, "Oh, would you come to Sheffield? We need a player for the weekend, and we have a lot of injuries." So I said, "Yeah, sure, I'll come play for you for a few games." And obviously, I knew Mike from his days in Nottingham, and Rick Verban was there as the assistant player coach. So I knew Rick because we played together and against each other for a long time. So I went, and I think I had a goal or something or two on the weekend, and they were saying, "Oh, you want to stay for a bit longer?" So I stayed, and I ended up playing there for the season. It was interesting because we played with 3 lines, but we had 10 forwards who could play. So Mike did a good job getting everybody on the ice. It's not easy when you have that extra guy, and they were all good enough to play. So unless there was an injury, then it was simple. You still had your 9 guys, and off you went. But when there was 10, he had to do a good job balancing, and he always did. And I think that played a big part in our success. I think Blazers, Mike Blaisdell's, for me, he was always he was good at matching lines, and that was kind of like his strength as far as I was concerned. And that we had a great year that year, and credit to the job Mike did and the players. It was a crazy year off the ice. Took a lot of mental toughness from that team to win all 4 trophies. But I mean, I have to say it was a good way to retire. Being a Grand Slam champion. There's no better way to finish your career, go out a winner, right? And so that's why I thought it was a good time I was 37 too, and my groin and my stomach I was in pain a lot, and missed a couple of games in the season because I was struggling with that a little bit. So it was a good time to leave the game.
And you mentioned Mike Blaisdell there, and he's as entrenched in Panthers history as Alex Dampier is. They both had times in Nottingham, both had times in Sheffield. How did they compare to each other?
Well, I think they were both good in their own way. I mean, Alex, like I said, was great communicator with the guys one-on-one and talking to the team, and that was his strength as far as I was concerned. And Mike, I thought he was great matching lines and getting the right guys together on the ice who he felt would match up best with other teams. He was really stubborn about that, and that got him a lot of wins too. So they were both they're both talented in their own way. And I think coaching is about finding the right balance with players and using your best attributes within the team, and finding what their best attributes are. And I think that's why those guys had success and won trophies.
When you came back to Nottingham as a member of the Steelers, you didn't play against Nottingham in the old stadium. You get to play against them in this big, shiny new arena that they've got. What was that like when you came back to play in that arena?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, it was nicer to play in the big rink, because I think going back to the smaller rink would have been very, very emotional, because I played all my years in the small rink. So it was a bit easier to go into the big rink, but it was difficult, I have to say. Obviously 11 years with the Panthers was difficult to come in and play against the Panthers. I think I even scored in Nottingham maybe once or something. So it was, your natural reaction is to celebrate. But then I think I celebrated a little. And I went, well, this is Nottingham, so I better be careful here. But no, I mean, I think the fans, though, I think they've forgiven me for going to Sheffield. I mean, it wasn't like I was offered a contract to come to Nottingham. So there's nothing for anybody to complain about. I didn't turn Nottingham down to go to Sheffield. It didn't happen that way. So I went to Sheffield thinking it was just going to be a few games, and I was thinking of going out to the West Coast in America to play in a league there for a year and just have some fun, But once I went to Sheffield and they saw there was a place for me on their team, they kept me there, and the rest is history that season.
And obviously, playing for Sheffield there, you would have been a part of, or did you play in the bench clearing brawl game?
Yeah, I played on both sides. Once with Panthers, once with Sheffield, and I was.
Obviously, that's the infamous one, though.
The one in Nottingham, yeah, where that went on for quite a long time. Yeah, I was in that one.
What was that like?
I remember how it started. Pardon?
What was that like to be a part of?
Well, I mean, anytime you're in a bench brawl, you've got to kind of keep your eyes in the back of your head, because you never know who might come up around you and start fighting with you or something, I remember the benches left, and I ended up just kind of first guy that I turned to was Ashley Tate. So obviously I knew Ashley and stuff. So we just hung on to each other's and kind of kept an eye on what was going on. And you're always looking to help somebody out in your team. If they get into trouble and they're getting beat up a bit, you're going to jump in and grab the other guy's arm or do what you can to help them, And but the whole incident, if I remember, started with Greg Adey and Vialli going up the ice. So then Nykar came off the bench, and then everything exploded from there. So there were some big tough guys on the ice, and Sheffield had some big tough guys too. I mean, Allison was there, and Metcalf was tough, and Panthers had some tough boys, and those are tricky. Those those brawls. I mean, they were worse back in my days in the IHL. Guys used to try to choke you and stuff, and so it wasn't as bad as some of them I had been in the IHL in my minor league days, but they were still nasty brawls in terms of European hockey, that's for sure.
And as you mentioned, that year was a good year for you to finish playing, because you won the Grand Slam with Sheffield. You won everything despite everything that's going on in Sheffield at the time. Mm-hmm. At what point did you have an eye on coaching? Because obviously the Panthers job came around pretty quickly after you retired.
Yeah, I mean, I always wanted to coach. I think I felt that it was something I wanted to do after my playing days. So I just walked into the office and saw Gary Moran and said, Gary, I'd like to be part of your coaching team next year. If you're interested, let me know. And Gary said, all right, think about it. And then Gary got back and he said, yeah, we'll bring you in as a co-coach with Alex Dampier. So my first year, we co-coached the team together. Then after that, I think Alex went to Sheffield. So then I stayed on and took over.
What did you learn? Like, what did you take on from other coaches that you'd had before? Like, because obviously you want to make your own style as a coach. Do you think you took anything from the coaches you had previously?
Well, yeah, probably. Probably you learn from guys, and you take the things that you thought was best and try to incorporate them into your coaching. At the end of the day, though, you have to be yourself and have your own style and go with what you truly believe in. And that's what I did. And I think, if anything, I remember the team. I think before I got there coaching the team, I'd finished 8th the year before. So we turned it around and became very competitive, and we were competing in finals, and some slipped away from us, and we won that big one in Sheffield. We were the first team to beat Sheffield in a final on that Kimi Allroos goal. So that was a special moment. My first trophy as a coach, so that was great too, you know. So yeah, great memories as a coach with the Panthers, and we were very competitive every year. We were battling for trophies, and I think, you know, that's the important thing, to be competitive.
And the one word that I asked Barry Nygaard to describe you as a coach the other day, and the word that he used was intense. Would you accept that?
Yeah, I think Barry's right. I think in my younger years, I was probably more intense as a coach than I was over time. You know, I think what happens in your early years, and I was coaching Barry in the early years, you still have that player mentality, that you still get those feelings that you can't get rid of. You know what I mean?
Mm.
As you mature as a coach, you tend to lose that a little bit, and you mellow a bit, and you deal with things a little bit differently. So the way I dealt with things maybe in my first few years, I wasn't dealing the same way in, let's say, my 7th or 8th year as a coach, or 9th or 10th year as a coach, you know, because I went off to Italy for quite a few years too. And over time, I think you get better and you learn, and your management skills of players improve, as everything does, you know. And I think Barry's right. I was probably a lot more intense in the earlier years than I was, let's say, when I coached Belfast. And I think also it depends on the team you have. Depends how much you have to motivate a team to play. And that sometimes brings more intensity out of you. If you can't get enough out of the guys, well, it's got to come out of you to try to pull it out of them. You know what I mean? So it could just depend too on the team. But he's right. I was intense in those early years. There's no question.
I imagine you can be a bit more relaxed in Belfast with a guy like Adam Keefe as the leader of your locker room.
Yeah, I mean, Adam was a great captain. I mean, great team player. I mean, he was a brave player. He wasn't the biggest guy in the league, but he fought some guys who were way bigger, way heavier. I don't know if they were any stronger or any tougher or could punch any harder than Adam, but he showed up, and I worried a little bit about him sometimes, you know, when he match up against some guy so big, and I think, oh God, I hope he can handle this, and he could every time. I mean, he surprised me one fight. This big guy got him with a couple of good shots, and he kind of went off of it, and I thought, oh, he's going to get it. And he just turned around and nailed this guy, buckled him down to his knees. The guy got up again, but I was like, whew, you know, good to see that. But he was tough. I mean, pound for pound, as tough as anybody's played in the league. Great captain, great leadership. There's a problem, he'd come talk to me about it. And sometimes players don't want to go to the coach. When he'd come and say, listen, just this guy, he doesn't want to come see you, but he just wants to let you know. But he was really good though. I think that's why he's a great coach, because he's a good communicator, and people will follow him, and certainly did as the captain. And he played a big part in our championship that year. And he's a great coach.
And just going back to Nottingham, how important was it for you to have Alex Dampier as a co-coach as you were setting out? Did he help you with, like, you know, how recruitment works, how to deal with certain situations? Like, because obviously he's been around and seen it all, done it all at that point.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I mean, he talked to me quite often. Probably talked to me when he thought I was going a bit too crazy or something. But no, yeah, he'd have whisper in my ear every once in a while, Paul. You know, what do you think? And we'd have a chat and stuff. And yeah, I mean, he had loads of experience, and of course, I'm gonna listen and take in what I can, and learn as much as I can. You know, it was nice to have a guy like that, you know, there with me in my first year. But I think, you know, at that time, I think Alex wanted to maybe move on to something different after that season. You know, be it if it was to be with another club, or be it where he had some management involved with what he was doing. So I think he had a different goal than just coaching after that season. And I think that's why he decided to go to Sheffield. I think there was not just coaching involved in his deal there. He was doing some of the management too. So I think he was happy to do that. But no, he was like I said, Alex was a great communicator. So of course I was going to listen.
And how did you find going from being someone who was recruited to recruiting people as a coach?
Well, I mean, it's it's about making contact with people and agents and other coaches and just networking. Networking is what it's all about when it comes to finding players. So that was basically the job. At that time, we when I was in Nottingham, we didn't have this great big budget. There was a wage cap early on, if you remember.
Especially moving into that arena, because I remember that they were saying that Neil and the management there weren't going to overspend. They were going to make sure that they made as much as they lost to build something long term in Nottingham.
Yeah, well, that made sense. I mean, of course, it was the early years, and they have to do well financially to make it all, and it has worked brilliantly in the end. I mean, the team makes loads of money. But I mean, as a coach, I had a pretty tight budget there. Gary would remind me, Paul, I don't think we can spend that much. Okay, back to the drawing board. Let's find someone else. And so that conversation was had many times. But we didn't have this massive budget that the team has today, for example. And I think with our resources, Gary, myself, and Neil Black, I mean, we produced some good teams, some competitive teams that were winning trophy, at least one trophy, and made quite a few finals, and we were thereabouts every year. So with that budget, we did extremely well.
And how did you find the change from obviously the Super League to the Elite League? Because you were there at the start of the Elite League's inception.
Yeah, I mean, obviously when you go back to having less imports, then you got to do your work finding some good British players, and I think we did with David Clark was one that we.
I think he's okay. He's okay.
Yeah, he's not bad, not bad. He did okay for us, didn't he, over the years? But no, Davey was exceptional, and he grew very quickly as a player, and he wanted it too. He didn't want to just be like that third or fourth line guy when he was younger. He wanted to be on the first or second line. So, but that was good to see, and he certainly proved himself and earned his spot over time. So, and you had to find guys like Matthew Myers and to come in, and he was another great player. I mean, so yeah, in the early years, it was about, also recruiting good British players to come in and play. And we did a good job with that also. But we also developed some young guys and brought guys in from Peterborough in games. I remember one game we had 3 17-year-olds on our third line because we had injuries, and we'd have to find a way to maybe get a win out of a game like that. And sometimes we did, sometimes we didn't. But, there was times where we actually were able to win with some real young players in our lineup. And it gave those players an opportunity to play when it was a Super League, they would never got a chance to play. So, yeah, we had to work hard to have a good team.
I'm guessing Clarkey had that cannon of a shot even back in those days.
Oh yeah, he had that from a young age, I'm sure. I mean, he's got an incredible shot, and that's why a guy kind of shot is good in the power play, right? You want to get him the puck and let him crank it up, and the thing about Clarkey is not just that he has a good shot, is he's a big game player. He scored big goals in the third period. How many times did he get a big goal for Nottingham and help the team win, a trophy? And he's a good all-around player, good team guy, good guy in the room. So, he a good man, I always liked having him around. There's never a problem on or off the ice. Just a great individual, and it was great to have him playing for me when I was there.
It's like you always hear, like the two nicest guys to ever play for the Panthers are David Clark and Jimmy Pack.
Yeah, I mean, they're both exceptional guys. I mean, really, polite guys. You can see they were well brought up, and behavior was always exceptional, and they were very professional. I think when you think of those two guys, they're just extremely professional. I mean, Jimmy's a different story, a couple of Stanley Cups, and you'd think he'd come in and be a big head, but no, he wasn't. He was down to earth, a good guy. And David was the same. He was just a good guy, and he could have been thought he was bigger than like a big head when he's scoring all those goals, but it never changed him. He was always the same guy. He always behaved the same way, always kept that same positive attitude, and worked hard. And so you see why both those two guys aren't just good players, but they're great professionals, and that's where their success came from. And they were likable characters.
And 2003 rolls around. And when did you start to get wind that your jersey number was going to be retired in Nottingham?
I think Gary came to me a day or two before and said, "Oh, we're going to retire your sweater. We're retiring Greg's, but we're going to retire yours too at the same time." So they retired both sweaters on the same night. I guess it was easier to do that. So up they went, but it was an honor to have that sweater up there. And when I go back to do commentary, and I have a quick peek up top, and I see it there, and it's special. I mean, there's no other way of putting it.
So there's in ice hockey, there's no greater honor, is there, than having your number retired and seeing your name every time you walk into a building?
No, very, very true. And it is an honor, and like I said, it's very special. And did I ever think in my lifetime I'd have a sweater with my name on it hanging from a rink somewhere? No, of course not. So that's why it's real special.
And that also shows your connection to the fan base as well. Because like you said, you went to play for Sheffield, but you must have felt very quickly that they still accepted you back in when you came back as the coach. You were still a Nottingham Panther.
Yeah, I mean, you're always going to get one or two who are always going to be critical, or one's going to hate you or whatever reason. And, you always have that one, right? But overall, no, the fans, accepted me back. And I think they saw an improvement in the team, saw a competitive team that was playing entertaining hockey. I mean, we always had a team that could score and was fun to watch, and exciting up and down, and sometimes maybe not as much up and down as I wanted. I wanted things probably a bit tighter defensively, but that's a learning process for some guys and some teams. But we were certainly entertaining, and we never quit. I mean, I think the teams I had in Nottingham, the guys, if we were down 2, 3, 4, we kept playing hard in those games where it wasn't going so well, and the fans would let us know when it wasn't going so well. But that's part of the business. That's part of sport. So you take it in your stride. But I know at the end of the day, the Panthers fans just want the team to do well. So you just don't take it personal. You just got to take it and come back stronger the next game and get a win, and then everyone's going to be happy again.
And then one of the big characters you brought into the team for 2003-04 season was John Craighead. Tell me about John.
Well, I mean, John was a really good hockey player. When he came in, the reputation was a big, tough guy. But when I watched him, I was like, wow, this guy can play, and he's got a great shot, and he's a good hockey player. And I mean, his first season with us, I think he scored the most goals ever in his career in one season. So, that was great. And he proved that he could not only, be a tough guy in the ice, but also play hockey and score. And I had no problem with John Craighead. I know there's different views on that. I liked John Craighead. I thought he was a good guy. I personally didn't have a problem with him. When you're a coach, you have a job to do, and you try to get the best out of your players, if it works or if it doesn't work.
And then you mentioned that Challenge Cup final in Sheffield with Kimi Alrous's goal, and you broke Sheffield's streak of never losing a final. How determined was you and the team to win that game going into it?
Well, I mean, it was strange because after we tied at home, everyone wrote us off. They're done. They're not going to win, and Sheffield's going to win it. No, and I just found with the team that we had, and the way Sundberg was playing at the time in net, he was playing really well. He was on his game, and I still felt we had a chance, and I think the team also felt that. And it was also important. I think the message was, let's have a good start here in Sheffield, because they're going to come out. We have to be ready to match that. And we did. The guys who were ready, we scored. If I remember, John Craighead, like you said, scored a one on the power play off the boards, low shot, fooled the goalie completely. That was a big goal for us. So we got a couple of early goals, and that helped us a lot. I mean, Sheffield were always going to come back. We're always probably going to get a couple of power play chances in the third period, and which was the case. And so we go into overtime. The one thing I did say to the guys, I remember I was saying, listen, short shifts. Let's not get caught out there in long shifts, because, it was a couple of tough. It was our second game. There was a tough one. The first 6 periods was tough. And so you get caught on a long shift, you're tired, you get scored on. And I remember we went out and we had a couple of guys changed, if I remember. So they still hadn't changed. Then we came up the ice with some fresh legs. And I remember Thompson made a great pass across to Covernero, I think it was. and he made a great pass to Allroos, went to the net. He was very clever. He went to the net like he was going to screen the defenseman and the goalie, then opened up to the far side, and he was a lefty on the right side, so it was just a perfect pass. If anyone's going to make that pass, it was Vigo, and it was right on his stick, and Kimmy just fired it home, and that there was no greater feeling to win that one. I think everyone was a bit surprised that we won in the end. I know Sheffield they've got the better of us many times, but in that game, I remember walking out to the ice. I just took a little glimpse at their bench, and those guys were not. They were like dead silent, not moving. They were obviously very disappointed because they battled hard too, and they were a very good team, probably better team than us, man for man. But in those two games, we found a way, and great goaltending, and just great team performance, and we pulled it off, and that's a great memory.
And what's the difference between winning a championship as a player and winning a championship as a coach?
It's a tough one to answer that because, you're obviously on the ice as a player, and you can do so much more on the ice. I mean, as a coach, it's more about how you set the team up, tactics, and who you match up with who, and there's a lot more going on, and it's more of a mental thing for a coach. Whereas a player, it's not just mental; it's also physical. I think that's the difference in terms of what you're going through. Is there any difference in the feeling? No, I don't think so. I think for a coach, it's more a bit of a relief than anything. It's like, I've won a trophy. Everyone's going to leave me alone now and not keep saying I'll never win a trophy or I'm not good enough to win a trophy. The next one is, well, you'll never win a second one. That'll be the next one that will come up, right? So
it was a fluke.
Yeah, exactly. But so that was a special moment, and winning that trophy as a coach, and it was nice to maybe prove a few people wrong that a player can coach and do well, and that's what happened on the night. But credit to the players. We had some big goals from Craig Edsalone and Allroos, and the whole team played well. Sundberg was great in net, and just a fantastic all-around effort from the players and our guys on the bench, Adam Goodrich and everybody else, Pete Hunt and everybody that was there at the time. They certainly did their part too.
And then you had 4 years coaching in Nottingham before you went over to Europe, to Switzerland, Italy, all these places and stuff. How did I'm guessing those 4 years in Nottingham set you up perfectly to go out there, kind of thing?
Yeah, it certainly did. By the time I got out there, I knew I could do the job. Like, I had that confidence that I could go in, take a team, and do well. I went to a team that wasn't supposed to do that great, and we ended up finishing at the end of it all second, and we ended up losing in the semifinals. We lost our goalie at the time, who was Robinson. I remember he played with the Panthers for a while.
Oh, Michel.
Yeah, and Michel got injured, so he couldn't play the semifinal. We had our backup, and we lost to Cortina, went on to win the championship. Maybe with our number one, we would have had it. It would have been tough. They were good. They were the best team, but I think we could have given them maybe at least an extra game or two in the series with our goalie. I think it was best of three that semifinal, and we lost. I think it was 3-1. So yeah, I think we would have got them to that fifth game had we had our number one, and who knows what would have happened, And then the next year we went all the way to the finals, and lost to Bolzano, who were the favorites. So that was my first 2 years with Ritt in Italy. So you're right, and so that's how it started for me in Italy. So you're right. The confidence that I got from Nottingham did help me when I went to Ritten. Beautiful place up in the mountains, by the way. Very quiet, but just beautiful.
I've seen because that's where the Panthers won the Continental Cup in 2017. So I've seen the pictures and stuff of it, and it just looks like the most magical town.
It is, yeah. It's not big or anything, but it's. I mean, the drive up to the town is a nightmare. If you feel a little bit ill when you get up to the top, but apart from that, everything else was great. And cold rink though. I mean, it was cold in practice, and even cold in the games for the coach. We used to have so much clothing on, we still froze. Didn't matter what we put on. Better to be playing when it's that cold, let me tell you. But no, but it was a good hockey town. Good support from the fans, and good sporting town. Big rivalry. Bolzano were like just down the hill from us. that was a big match. It was like a Nottingham Sheffield game. That Written Bolzano game at that time was one of the bigger matchups. So that was fun. And no, it was a good league, good players, and very competitive.
And did you try and like completely separate yourself from British hockey at that point, or did you always find yourself casting an eye on what was going off in the Elite League?
Well, yeah, I think every once in a while I check and see how the teams are doing and who's doing what, and check, see who's scoring for who, and all that stuff. Because the next year you might be looking for some guys, and you might think, who could help your roster. Because when I went over, I remember bringing a couple of guys with me to, that I knew that I'd seen play. So, I mean, you always keep an eye on things. For future reference, but also because I had an interest in the league, because I played and coached in the league.
And then you that interest did come back. You did come back to the Elite League in 2013 with Belfast. How did that opportunity come around?
I'm trying to think back now.
Because I remember the reception you got in Nottingham when you came back with Belfast. It was quite incredible.
Yeah, I mean, I was touched by that and didn't expect it. So it was really nice. I mean, the fans always treat me nice when I come back to any game, really. They show their appreciation, and I appreciate it. And it's special, of course, I mean, I did come back, and I'm trying to remember, I think it was Brunico I was with the year before. And we had a good year, but lost out in the semifinals. And they decided to be honest with you, I wasn't sure if I wanted to go back. If I was going to go back, it would have to be an offer I couldn't refuse, because I want to be closer to home because of the kids. So Belfast was a good option. And when Todd was looking for a coach, I think Doug Christensen left Belfast to go to Sheffield, and they weren't ready for that, or they expected that possibility. And
the day after he lost the playoffs.
Yeah. So, but I don't. Did he announce it right then? Yeah.
It was literally I think the next day Sheffield announced that he'd gone, and they had the press thing with him where he had the bright orange tie on, which became the big thing for a while.
Oh boy. So, anyways, and I guess that's when Todd found that I was available and got in contact, and we talked and went from there. So so it gave me the opportunity to go to Belfast, and had a great year in Belfast. I mean, couldn't have had a better one.
Well, based on what happened that year with Belfast, I imagine you thought that the Elite League had just got a lot easier, because your team breezed that league that year.
I don't think it was ever easy. I mean, we had tough games and a lot of close games. We won a lot of games in the third period at the Battle. I think we just had that was a season. I think it was the first season where I put some lines together and left them together the whole year. I very rarely changed them, because I was so happy with how they were playing together. I thought, I'm not changing. We're winning. These guys, I don't care, happy or not, you're playing. These guys are playing together. And the funny thing was, I started the same line almost every game. I wouldn't change that. I didn't care who the other team put on. I just put the same line on. The guy used to become a bit of a joke before the game. I'd come in, and before I even said it, the guys would start naming off who I was going to put on the ice, because they knew I was either very superstitious or that's just the way I was going to do it, right? So we might as well buy into it. The coach is doing it, so he's not going to change. So, but the guys thought it was, looked at it as a bit of a laugh. Maybe it relaxed us a bit before games too, that I kept going to the same line to start every game. But
who was that line?
I'm trying to remember now.
Well, it wasn't Lloyd Keefe and someone, was it?
No, it was Svez, White Cotton, and I'm trying to think of
White Cotton. He was a good player.
Yeah, so that line went out. We had a lot of good players on that team. I mean, I don't think we had a weak player, and good British players and good goaltending. Murphy was exceptional that year. So there was a few funny things there, but no, we had. I mean, it was the kind of team that we knew we had a big game to play. I remember going to Sheffield once. We had a couple, because they were closest to us in the standings and staying with us. And we went into, I thought, if we can win in Sheffield, then we're going to be tough to beat this year. And we went in there and played like incredible. Probably one of the best games that I coached in terms of how well the team performed. It was like almost perfection from the bench. You kind of just sit there and go, wow, these guys are playing so good. It was like that kind of game we played and won. And after that, I thought, oh boy, this team's going to be hard to beat, no matter where we are, whatever situation. It's not easy to go in Sheffield and win easily, you know. And we won some big games. You think we won the league? We won those 2 in Nottingham, and then all the scores went our way.
Is that the one with like 7 seconds left? One of those games.
Your memory's better than mine. You're a lot younger.
Yeah, that might have been a few years before. There was one weekend where I remember Belfast came to Nottingham and they won one game with 7 seconds to go. And I remember just being completely depressed for about 2 weeks afterwards.
Yeah,
that might have been that year or one afterwards. I can't remember.
yeah. But so there was games that the interesting thing was we had like a stint in our schedule. I think we played 7 road games, and our 7th one was in Nottingham. I don't think we lost one of those till we got to Nottingham. Then Nottingham gave us a good beating. They took us out that game, played way better than us, beat us. No excuses. They were just better. And Corey Nelson did a great job with the Panthers, getting them ready. You know, a great coach. And I thought, okay, let's see what kind of reaction we get. I think we went on after that and won 16 in a row or something. So that's just the kind of team we had. The guys, you know, if they had a game where they weren't happy about how they played, the next team, look out, because you were going to get it the next game. Like, they just had that kind of personality. Like, they wanted to win. And every game I went into with that team, I thought, we can win this. Like, it was never a doubt in my mind that there wasn't a game we couldn't win. And I don't think we lost many that year. And you're right, we won, you know, quite early in the season. The results had to go our way a little bit, of course. But just a great team, great bunch of guys, but tough mentally, the guys, not just, you know, good fit athletes, but mentally they were tough and could deal with the pressure. You know, we went into rinks like Cardiff, Coventry, the smaller rinks, and won. We didn't lose many games in those rinks, and those are the rinks that if you can get points out of, you can win championships. And that team didn't matter if it was a big ice, small ice, they could play. And that's why we're so successful.
And on that team, you got a guy in Darryl Lloyd, who's a pantomime villain for every other team in the Elite League who he plays for. What's it like to coach a guy like? Because I imagine he's one of those guys you just accept he's going to take a penalty or 2 in a game because he's going to draw you 5 more.
Yeah, I mean, you know, for coaches, we were like, don't take any bad penalties, guys. Like, we got a lead here. Don't. And like I say, Lloyd's just he's just finds his way to get in front of everybody. You cut somebody off or get his stick in there, and he drives fans crazy. And he got away with a lot of stuff too. I mean, he knew how to do it without getting penalties. And on occasion, he would get caught. You know, I found him a bit shy off the ice. He was the complete opposite character off the ice. Yeah, he wasn't a loud character or really easygoing, nice guy. Even a bit shy, I felt, you know. But on the ice, he was, like I said, the fans thought he was a villain. I thought he was a great person, but just goes to show you guys are never the same on the ice and off the ice. He could skate like the wind. Great penalty killer, probably one of our better penalty killers that year. You know, got the occasional goal for us too, chipped in that way. Very physical, could hit hard, really hard. But then again, he did take occasional penalty. But you know, sometimes some guys, you know, you're not going to change their whole game, and you shouldn't. You should let them play their game. And with Lloyd, we did. We just tried to keep him from not taking too many penalties in the big games, especially. But he knew when to kind of, you know, not take penalties. He knew when it was a big game and stuff that, okay, I can't be sloppy with my stick or catch a guy late or, you know. So he was smart that way.
And obviously that Belfast team was so good. And the one comment that gets made is that they won the league too early. And it kind of like, that's why everything petered out towards the end. Do you buy into that theory at all?
I think it's tough mentally when you win and then you have so many games to play. But if you look at our record, we kept winning. We didn't lose a lot of games that season. So it didn't affect our win-losses. I just think that when you're playing for a league championship, you're playing hard every night. Everybody's trying to beat you. It does wear you out a little bit. And we didn't have as many players as they have today. A lot of teams are running with 4 lines today. Excuse me. We played mostly with, 3 lines. And so, yeah, it does take its toll on you physically. And I think maybe you start to run out a bit of energy. I thought I thought we did a little bit. We didn't have the legs we had, maybe in the playoffs that we had throughout the season. And I think that's because we were playing hard, every game. But at the end of the day, we lost the final in the cup in a shootout, and we lost the playoff in overtime. So you couldn't go any farther. A bit of luck, we could have won all four. We won the conference, which is was a tough one to win back then because you had Belfast, Nottingham, Cardiff, to name a few of the teams in that conference. So we won 2 of the trophies, and the other 2 we lost in the shootout and in an overtime. So it was a great year. Just maybe a bit of luck in that final, especially the playoff final. I thought you just didn't have any luck in that game. Sometimes you get a little bit of luck, and that makes the difference. But in that one, we didn't.
Because this is obviously Panthers, type show. I've got to bring up the Challenge Cup final. Did you expect that? Because obviously that was all Nottingham really had left to play for at that point. They brought 2 guys back from injury in the warm-ups of that game and taped them all together. Did you expect that what was to come in that game?
No, I knew it was going to be a tough game. I knew Nottingham were good at home, and we're going to come out to play hard, and you just never know what's going to happen. I think we had a 2-goal lead going into that game. Was it 2?
It's 2 or 3.
So that's not
No, 3.
Yeah, it's still not. I would have felt more comfortable with 4 or 5, to be honest with you. Going into Nottingham, it was going to be a tough one. But our biggest issue was, and probably a lot of people don't know this story, is Murphy was very ill, and he was vomiting, and he picked up a flu bug or something. And Todd and I had talked, is he going to be all right to play? We didn't know if he was going to be all right to play. And we even had to chat about maybe, either playing the backup, Dixon, or even maybe signing someone for the game and playing him because Murphy wasn't well. And we talked to Murphy, and he said no, he was going to play. He was going to fight through it. And we had to isolate him in the other room away from the team because he was not well. And I think that probably didn't help us in the game because I think, and I don't like to make excuses, but I know the way Murphy was playing that year. If I remember that game, he looked shaky on a couple of long shots, and normally he never looked shaky on anything like when he was playing for me. So you knew he wasn't 100%. And I don't think, in that game that didn't help us, obviously. But I'm not going to make excuses. The Panthers played really well and came back, and the game was tied, and we still had to fight to get into overtime and then go through that and then go to the shootout. So it's not like they came back at us and we just completely folded and didn't deal with the pressure we did. It just, you get into a shootout and it's a bit flip a coin, right? That's the way it goes in shootouts. So it wasn't our night when it came to the shootout. But to be honest with you, I think that team, I don't think shootouts was our best asset of anything of that team. That wasn't our strength.
I had Kowalski on here like months ago, and he says, I think Belfast caught me on one of those rare days where I actually stopped some shots in a shootout because he says I wasn't great at them. but Gary,
well,
so I was going to say, Gary takes great delight in saying that the added motivation for Nottingham was brought over by Todd because he brought all the press with him from Belfast.
Yeah, I mean, I think, there's probably some truth in that. I mean, I know Adam Goodrich, the trainer for the Panthers. As soon as he saw cameramen and people walking around, he went straight into that room. I know Adam very well. We worked together and said, listen, guys, they think they've won this. I know exactly what he was going to do if he saw that. But those things as a coach is not, you have no say in that. That's not for me. I mean, would I have done differently? Well, maybe. But that, managers have a job to do in promoting the team and getting everything they can to sell tickets, and they have a tough job, and you respect that. You just got to, do your thing. So, but I know for a fact, Adam did precisely what you said and went in and motivated the team as much as he could. And I'm sure the coaching staff did too. So that certainly helped them. There's no question.
And then for some reason on the show, I always like to pump up Goody's ego a bit more than I need to. So tell me how important he is to the Panthers as an organisation.
Well, he's the equipment manager, basically. He's got to make sure the guys got to get all their gear in there, and he's got a budget to deal with. And I mean, these trainers, they're up like, you get off the bus and everyone goes home at 3 o'clock in the morning. Well, the trainer stays there and does laundry for another 2 hours, and then he's still got to get back to the rink earlier than everybody else the next day for another game or practice or whatever it may be. So they work hard, and they're a big part of the team. And if they're not doing their jobs properly, I mean, a lot of guys are going to be unhappy, and they're going to let the coach know and the manager and everybody. So you got to have a good guy like Goody in there doing the job, and he's been there a lot of years. Certainly a guy that has had a big impact on the team, and hard worker, good guy. I like Goody a lot, get along great with him, and still keep in touch with him today. So he does a fantastic job there.
And quite unbelievably to a lot of people, that year in Belfast was your last year as a coach, and no one can quite put their finger on why. Did you just have enough at that point? Was there just not an opportunity that you liked the look of? Why was that poor lady's last year?
Well, I also, my kids were still fairly young. They were, primary. I don't even think Max had started primary by then, but maybe it just started. So they're both in secondary now. But I just also didn't want to travel back and onto the continent to coach, and just find that you're away from the family too long, from the kids, and so I wanted to be home with the kids. And if an opportunity opened up closer to home or in the country, then I might consider it, but also there was the financial side, that if I was going to coach, I wanted to have a certain salary. And if I couldn't get that, then I didn't want to do the job, to be honest with you, because you got to make a good living at it if you're going to be coaching and taking on all that responsibility and pressure, and you're not going to do it for a cheap salary. So those are a couple of reasons why. And then Aaron Murphy said to me, because we had worked a bit together in Belfast when I was there, and he was like, "Hey, you want to come on and do some work with me with Premier Sports? We'll do some games." And started with him, and we worked well together, and ever since then we've been working together. Apart from now, since we've had the COVID virus come in, it's kind of stopped all of that for now, but hopefully we'll get back at it at some point. But so for me, that was good, a blessing that I could jump into a role like that, where I could talk about hockey. And being a player and a coach, you get both sides, both perspectives, and you try to bring that to the audience. And Murph has a good understanding of the game too, so that that works well. We get along great. So those are very important when you're with somebody you like, and you work well together. So,
and I noticed since you started doing that, you've seen how the Elite League's gone from strength to strength to strength each year. And I'm guessing, is the product as good as you've ever seen it, as it was last season in 2019-20?
Yeah, I think, because hockey's been changing over the years, becoming more of a speed and skill game. You saw that with Nottingham and Sheffield, I felt. Although Cardiff looked like they were going to go on to win the league, Nottingham and Sheffield's speed was impressive, and their skill was impressive. Probably the two teams I enjoyed watching the most. I mean, Cardiff were always good, but those two teams were exciting to watch. Quick game, kind of what I like, a fast game. Cardiff were just a good hockey team, great, great players, and well coached with Andrew Lord there. So when you look at the level of play, it's impressive. I think it's a bit harder for some of the lower end teams to have teams of that quality, because they don't have the budget to bring so many quality players. They have to kind of juggle things around a bit, put a good team on the ice that's competitive. So it's a bit harder for, let's say, the Dundees out there. Omar Pasha does a good job there of finding guys and putting a competitive team on the ice. Not easy, for example. So, yeah, I mean, the level is high. Is it as good as what the Super League was? No, I don't think it's as good. But it's very close. Very, very close. But I still think it's a great league. Exciting hockey. And you're right. If it gets better and better every year, I think that, if you're going to have where you have so many imports, so many British guys, you got to develop British players who can play at that level. So the stronger the league gets, the better those British players have to be to come in to make these teams, which is tough. So if you get the level and too many imports, it's tough for those British guys to get in there. So you have to find the right balance, because you want British players to be in the game, and you don't want to lose that. I don't think the fans like to see some of their homegrown talent on the ice, or even a guy from Scotland, coming down and playing in Nottingham, for example, or a guy like Stevie Lee. I think was he from Hull or something, Stevie Lee.
Yeah.
So those guys are good players, and you don't want to lose that. So you got to be there's a fine line on how many imports you have in the league, because we saw with the Super League, with too many, there wasn't a lot of spots for the British guys.
And you can see the benefit that has with what GB did recently, where they managed to stay in Pool A. That shows that the level that the British players have managed to reach in the current environment.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's about the right balance, right? Because you've got some very talented British players. You've also got some very talented dual nationals who are on that team. And for the team to stay up at that level, you're going to need both. Unless your development is so good with your British guys that they're better than the dual nationals that are in the country, then fair enough. But till that happens, you're going to need to have that balance. And it's a bit like the league. You need to have the right balance to kind of keep everybody happy, but also to have a good product on the ice. But to have a good GB team, you're going to have the right balance with your homegrown talent and your dual nationals, especially to survive at that level and at the top of the world.
And just to take things back to when you were at Belfast, how like talking about the British players, how much of an advantage is it to have a British netminder like Stephen Murphy to let you have that extra import outskater, like Cardiff had with Bounce for the last X amount of years?
Well, yeah, I mean that helps. That certainly helps, and also, thing about those guys is you don't even look at them as British players, because they're as good as goalies that were in the league. So it's a big bonus. I mean, I think if you look at Todd Kelman, Murphy was in Belfast and he goes to Cardiff and he sees Bounds there and he thinks, wow, this is good, because we're going to have an extra Bounds. Bounds is great, by the way. And so Murphy was too. You see that as a GM, and you're like, well, we're off to a good start here. We got one of the top goalies and we can have an extra import. So it does help Cardiff a lot.
Well, I cannot thank you enough for how generous you've been with your time today. This has been amazing to listen to these stories and things. But I do have one rule on this show, and that is that it has. And there's been plenty of laughs throughout, but it has to end on a funny story. So if you look back at your time in the game, it can be an on-ice moment, an off-ice moment, a moment that makes you laugh. What would it be?
I don't know, there's probably quite a few over the years that made me laugh. Well, I was telling the guys on one of the chat things about a prank I played on one of my teammates, and just recently I was telling them, and today I still think about it and still laugh about it. I mean, the story. Well, I found out from the guy is that he was cutting my lace before practice, so I came in late. I looked down to get my skates on. I was rushing. Things weren't so strict on that, what time you had to be there back in the early years, by the way. So normally I was early, but there was occasion for some reason. We used to practice at night too, so it was a bit of a weird thing. And I looked down, my skates would be cut. I'm like, okay, I'm going to be late now for practice because someone's cut my leg. Anyways, this went on for a few times, and I'm sure the guys thought it was really funny. But then the blame was someone eventually told me who it was, so I thought, okay, I'm gonna get this person back. So got into the room one day, found their mouthpiece, and I took some garlic puree and I poured it inside the mouthpiece and put it back. And the room was really hot back in the oil rink then, because to dry stuff, right? Put it back. So that dried eventually over time. I took the guy's pad out of his helmet, put more garlic puree inside the helmet, popped the pad back in. So we get out there on the ice, practice starts, and he always used to hook his mouthpiece in his helmet, to start practice. How he did it, I don't remember how he did it, but he used to hook it in there. And we were going around doing a few laughs, and eventually he pops his mouthpiece, right? So about so many seconds later, he's like you can see him, and no one else knew that I did this, right? So I'm the only one who knows. So I'm trying not to laugh, of course, right? He rushes over to the water bottles, and he's pouring water, spitting it out, coughing, and he's rinsing his mouthpiece. He never put it back in his mouth. He kind of figured something was in it, right? So anyways, he gets back out there and he's skating around, and all of a sudden, about after 5 minutes of doing drills and stuff, the puree obviously starts to come down onto his face and everything. So anyways, he takes off back to the boards, and he's throwing water on his head and drinking it, and everyone's looking at him like, what's wrong with him? Like, what's going on? I never told anybody, right? And I struggled not to laugh, because he was obviously looking around to see, if he could find somebody to, anyways, that's, for some reason, I've always remembered that. It's always tickled me that I got away with that, but he's probably figured it out now who did it. But it was a good laugh at the time for me. And the thing was, if I told anybody, they would eventually tell them, right? So for a long time, I never said a word about it, but we were always pranking each other's doing stuff. Guys used to be tying equipment together with laces. And so you'd come in trying to put your gear on, and you couldn't get it on because things were tied together. And guys used to do all kinds of stuff. And the worst one was when they used to try to put a bit of tape on your blade. You got to the point where you're always checking your blades to make sure there was no tape, because you go out onto the ice before the game or something and wipe out in front of everybody. It was funny for the guys, but not for you. So yeah, there was all kinds of stuff going on back in the day.
Oh, that I love that. I love that. that. Thank you so much for your time. This is, like I said, this has been absolutely incredible, and I just know people are going to love listening to this.
No, it was great chatting with you, Dan, and I had a great time, and you get great questions. I mean, I think you covered my whole life there. But no, it was good. It was good fun.
I've left it open for a part 2 about GB at some point down the line. If you notice, I didn't bring those ones up.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Sorry, I think my phone is just getting a lot of messages here all of a sudden.
Well, don't worry, we're not live.
No, it's okay. Well, it doesn't matter anyways. It's real, isn't it? So, no, it was great. I mean, it was a great chat, and thanks for having me on, and I hope everybody enjoys it.
2021 is the year to make things happen. Pop into your local branch today and find out how the Nottingham Building Society could help you plan your future finances.